Ultimatum arrived on a Tuesday, which seemed wrong somehow, as though an event of this magnitude should have chosen a more dramatic day of the week. 12 simultaneous transmissions, each from a different civilization, each carrying the same core demand in its own language, each time to arrive at Earth's communication arrays within the same 4-minute window. The coordination alone was the message. 12 civilizations that had never publicly allied, representing 6 different political blocs within the Galactic Compact, had found common cause specific enough to synchronize a transmission to the millisecond. Whatever humanity had done, or more precisely, whatever humanity was about to do, had produced a coalition that the Compact's political analysts would later describe as structurally impossible, given the competing interests involved. The demand was simple. Humanity would cease development of the Threshold Gate 7 expansion project within 30 days. All construction would halt, all personnel would withdraw. The installation, currently the most significant human infrastructure project in compact space, would be decommissioned and its materials redistributed according to a formula the 12 civilizations had apparently negotiated among themselves. Non-compliance would result in collective action. The transmission did not define collective action. It didn't need to. 12 civilizations, collectively representing 40% of the Compact's military capacity, had just told humanity what was going to happen. The definition of collective action was implicit in the arithmetic. Admiral Elena Ashford read the transmission 3 times in the Compact Emergency Council chamber, then set it down and looked at the assembled human delegation with the expression of someone who had not slept in 22 hours and was not expecting to sleep in the near future. Options, she said. The room offered several, in the way rooms offer options when the actual options are limited and everyone knows it. Negotiate, comply, resist. Each position had advocates, each advocacy had a logic, and the logic of each position ended in the same place when you followed it far enough. Humanity was significantly outmatched, and the 30-day window was not a negotiating timeline, it was a countdown. Commander Reed Crane, sitting at the end of the table, said nothing for the first 40 minutes. He had been in the room because he had been in the building when the transmissions arrived, not because anyone had specifically requested his presence, and he had the particular quality of stillness that people develop when they are thinking carefully and don't want to interrupt themselves. At the 41-minute mark, he said, "Who wrote the ultimatum?" The room looked at him. Ashford looked at him. "The 12 civilizations," she said. "Jointly, presumably." "Who wrote it?" Crane said. "Not who signed it, who drafted the language." A pause. "That's not information we have," said Intelligence Officer Finch. "We should get it," Crane said. "The transmission is coordinated to the millisecond. 12 civilizations with competing interests produced identical core language. Someone wrote the original draft, and 11 others accepted it with modifications." He looked at the transmission document. The phrasing in the 4th paragraph, "Threshold Gate 7 represents an existential reconfiguration of spatial access within the Compact's core systems." That's not diplomatic language. That's engineering language. Someone who understands what Threshold Gate 7 actually does wrote that paragraph. Ashford looked at the 4th paragraph. "The Velthari delegation uses similar phrasing in their technical assessments," Finch said. "The Velthari," Crane said, "who have been publicly neutral on the Threshold Gate project for 2 years. Publicly, Finch said, and the word landed in the room with the specific weight of a word that means more than its surface. 12 civilizations coordinated this transmission, Crane said. The Velthari wrote the technical language and stayed off the signatory list. He paused. That tells us something. What? Ashford said. That someone in the Velthari command structure understands the project well enough to articulate the threat and doesn't want to be identified as the architect of the ultimatum, he said, which means they want a resolution that doesn't require them to be publicly opposed to humanity. He looked at Ashford. They're not trying to destroy the project. They're trying to stop it in a way that leaves the relationship intact. The room was quiet. That changes the 30 days, Ashford said slowly. It changes what the 30 days are for, Crane said. They're not a countdown to collective action. They're a window for humanity to do something that lets the coalition dissolve without anyone losing face. He paused. The question is what that something is. The answer took 11 days to develop and required a degree of internal disagreement that Ashford would later describe in her official report as vigorous deliberation, which was the diplomatic language for a process that had, at several points, come close to producing outcomes she didn't want to document. The core problem was genuine. Threshold Gate 7 was not a military installation. It was infrastructure, a spatial access node that would reduce transit time between humanity's outer settlements and the compact core systems by 60%. The economic implications were significant and positive for human interests, and significantly disruptive to the transit fee structures that 6 of the 12 signatories relied on for a substantial portion of their trade revenue. The ultimatum was not, at its foundation, about existential threat. It was about money and the particular fear that accompanies watching a smaller economy about to become considerably less small. "They're not afraid of what we'll do at the gate," said Deputy Commissioner Harrow on day 9 of the deliberations. "They're afraid of what will become after it." "Yes," Crane said, "which is why compliance or resistance both fail. Compliance confirms that we can be stopped by coordinated pressure. Resistance confirms that we're the threat they're describing." He paused. "We need a third option that addresses what they're actually afraid of without surrendering what we're actually building." "And that third option is?" Ashford asked. Crane had been working on the answer for 9 days. He had been working on it in the particular way he worked on problems that mattered. Not continuously, but in the background, letting it run while he did other things, checking on it periodically, the way you check on something you've left to develop on its own time. "One sentence," he said, "delivered simultaneously to all 12 signatories, not through the standard diplomatic channels, through the same communication infrastructure they used to deliver the ultimatum." He set a single page on the table. "Time to arrive in the same 4-minute window they used." Ashford read the sentence. She read it again. "This is not a negotiating position," she said. "No," Crane said. "It's not." "It's not a concession either," Harrow said, reading over Ashford's shoulder. "No," Crane said. "It's neither. That's the point." The room was quiet for a long moment. Outside the emergency council chamber, the compact continued its business. Ships moving through the transit lanes, trade negotiations proceeding, 40 civilizations managing the ordinary complexity of shared space. In 30 days, if nothing changed, some portion of that complexity was going to become considerably less ordinary. "If this doesn't work," Ashford said, "then we're in the same position we're in now," Crane said, "with 11 fewer days." He looked at the sentence on the page. "But I think it works, because it's true. And the person who wrote the 4th paragraph of the ultimatum knows it's true." Ashford looked at the sentence for a long time. Then she looked at Crane. "How do you want to send it?" The transmission went out on day 12, at 0400 station time, through the same communication infrastructure the 12 civilizations had used 17 days earlier. The timing within the 4-minute window was exact. Crane had spent 2 days working with the communications team to replicate the synchronization protocol, which had required reverse engineering the coordination mechanism from the original transmission metadata. The 12 signatories received humanity's response simultaneously, to the millisecond. The sentence read, "We have been building this gate for ourselves. We are prepared to build the next one for everyone." Nothing else. No negotiating framework, no concessions, no counter-ultimatum. One sentence, delivered with the same precision the coalition had used for its demand, containing an offer that was either the most significant proposal in compact history or a bluff so complete that it would accelerate the countdown rather than pause it. Crane sat in the communications center and watched the delivery confirmations come in, and felt the specific quality of stillness that follows an action you cannot take back. "How long before we hear something?" Ashford asked, standing behind him. "Unknown," he said. "The sentence requires them to make a decision they haven't discussed. Coalition decisions take time." He paused. "The Velthari will move first. They wrote the technical language. They understand what we're offering." "What are we offering?" Harrow said. "Specifically. The sentence is, it's elegant, but what does it actually commit us to?" "Nothing yet," Crane said. "That's the construction. We're not offering a treaty. We're not offering a concession. We're not ceding anything we've built. We're offering a conversation about what comes next." He looked at the delivery confirmations. "The gate they're afraid of is the one that makes us more powerful than they're comfortable with. The gate we're offering to build together is one that makes the fear irrelevant because they're part of it." "We don't have the resources to build a second gate," Harrow said. "Not yet," Crane said. "But in 5 years, with Threshold Gate 7 operational, we will." That's what the 4th paragraph of the ultimatum was really about. They ran the economic projections, and they know what we look like in 5 years. He paused. "We're showing them that we ran the same projections, and we're making a choice about what to do with that position before we're in it." Harrow was quiet. "That's either very sophisticated diplomacy or a very expensive promise." "Yes," Crane said, "it is." The first response came from the Aetherai, 6 hours after delivery, not from the signatory delegation, from Elder Varath herself, which was the equivalent of a head of state responding personally to a diplomatic communication, which had not happened in the Aetherai's recorded engagement with humanity in 11 years of compact membership. The message was 3 words in formal Aetherai, which Crane's translator rendered as, "Clarify the parameters." "She's interested," Ashford said. "She's been interested for 6 hours, Crane said. She waited to respond until she'd consulted her full council. The fact that she's asking for parameters means the council didn't tell her to reject it. He drafted a response. Parameters are whatever the involved parties negotiate in good faith. We're not specifying them in advance because we don't know what the involved parties need yet. That's not a parameter, Harrow said. It's the only honest answer, Crane said. We're not going to pretend we know what a joint gate project looks like before we've had a single conversation about it. He sent the response. Varath replied in 40 minutes, fast for Aetheri deliberative process, which typically operated on timescales measured in days. The reply was longer. The proposal requires structural definition before the coalition can evaluate it. We suggest a working group, neutral location, 30 days. Crane read this and felt something shift in the room's quality of tension. Not resolution, but the specific change that happens when a situation that was moving toward one outcome begins moving toward a different one. She's offering to pause the countdown, Ashford said. She's offering to replace the countdown with a process, Crane said. Those are different things. A process has no automatic endpoint. He paused. She's also implicitly separating herself from the coalition timeline. The 30 days was a collective deadline. She's proposing a new 30 days that belongs to a different structure. The coalition won't hold if Varath is negotiating separately, Harrow said. No, Crane said. It won't. The Velthari response came on day 15, which was 3 days after the Aetheri exchange and 13 days into the countdown. It came not through the coalition channel, but through a separate direct transmission, which was itself a statement. The Velthari were distinguishing their response from the collective ultimatum. The message was from Admiral Catan. Crane read it twice before bringing it to Ashford. He wants a meeting, Crane said. Private. No delegation, no record. Ashford looked at him. Catan wrote the fourth paragraph. That's my assessment, Crane said. He understands the gate well enough to articulate the threat, and he's been publicly neutral, which means he's been trying to manage this from inside the coalition without being identified as the driver. He paused. He's the one who coordinated the timing. He's the one who kept the Velthari off the signatory list. He built the ultimatum as a mechanism to produce a specific outcome, and our sentence changed what that outcome was going to be. What outcome was he trying to produce? Ashford asked. I think he was trying to force a conversation we weren't having, Crane said. Humanity has been building Threshold Gate 7 as a unilateral project. The economic disruption is real. The fear is real. He built a coalition ultimatum because it was the only instrument large enough to make humanity stop and think about what we were doing and what it meant for everyone around us. He looked at the message. He didn't want collective action. He wanted us to get to the sentence. Ashford was quiet for a long moment. He engineered the ultimatum to produce our response. I think he hoped we'd produce something like it, Crane said. He couldn't know what we'd say, but he knew that if we said anything worth saying, it would come out of being genuinely threatened. A pause. The sentence only works because the threat was real. A genuine offer made under genuine pressure is different from a diplomatic gesture made in comfort. He put us under pressure to find out if we'd produce something worth building on, Ashford said. Yes, Crane said, and he stayed off the signatory list so he could be the one to build on it if we did. Ashford looked at the meeting request. Where does he want to meet? Covenant Station, Crane said. Neutral ground, day 20 of the countdown. That gives us 5 days before the original deadline, Ashford said. Yes, Crane said. I think that's deliberate. He wants the deadline still present when we meet. Pressure produces honesty. He paused. He's been consistent about that. Ashford approved the meeting. Crane drafted the acceptance and sent it through the direct channel Catan had used, bypassing the coalition infrastructure entirely. The response came back in 11 minutes. Confirmed. Come alone. Bring the engineer who designed the gate. Crane read this and thought about a Velthari admiral who had spent 2 years publicly neutral, while quietly building the most effective diplomatic pressure instrument in recent compact history, and who had now asked for a private meeting with the person who had answered it. He thought about the sentence. We are prepared to build the next one for everyone. He had written it in 40 minutes on day 9, sitting in an empty conference room at 0200, working backwards from the thing that was actually true toward the words that could carry it. It had not felt like diplomacy when he wrote it. It had felt like the only honest thing to say. He was beginning to understand that Catan had been waiting for exactly that. Parte 3 de 3. A 1206 palavras. Covenant Station occupied a position in neutral space that no civilization claimed and everyone used, which made it the compact's most honest location. A place that existed purely because it was useful, without the accumulated weight of ownership or history or the particular pride that made diplomacy difficult in spaces that belonged to someone. Crane arrived on day 20 with Dr. Faith Dalton, who had designed Threshold Gate 7's spatial architecture and who had spent the transit from Earth reading the ultimatum's technical language with the expression of someone recognizing their own work reflected back at them through someone else's understanding. "He knows the gate," she said, 3 hours into the transit. The fourth paragraph. "The resonance frequency analysis. That's not public documentation. That's from our internal engineering reports." "I know," Crane said. "How did he get internal engineering reports?" "I don't know," Crane said. "I intend to ask." Dalton was quiet for a moment. "He didn't get it wrong," she said. "The analysis. He understood it correctly and described it accurately. The existential reconfiguration language is dramatic, but it's not inaccurate. If the gate operates at projected capacity, the spatial access shift in the core systems is significant enough to restructure transit economics across 6 trade corridors." She paused. "He's not wrong to be concerned." "No," Crane said. "He's not." "Then why are we building it?" Dalton asked. Crane looked at her. "Because we need it," he said. "Our outer settlements are running on 18-hour transit delays. 3 colonies nearly failed last year because emergency resupply couldn't reach them in time. The gate isn't a power projection. It's infrastructure we should have built 10 years ago." He paused. "The problem is that what we need and what disrupts others aren't mutually exclusive." "Which is why the sentence worked," Dalton said. "If it worked," Crane said, "we'll know in a few hours." Catan was already in the meeting room when they arrived, which was notable because Crane had been told the room would be neutral and unoccupied. He was sitting at the table with his forearms in the configuration that Crane's cultural briefings had described as relaxed formality, engaged but not performing. 3 crimson eyes moving from Crane to Dalton and settling briefly on each with the assessing attention of someone reading a situation in real time. "Dr. Dalton," he said, "the resonance frequency analysis in your 3rd quarterly report is the most accurate technical documentation of spatial gate mechanics I have encountered outside Velthari engineering archives." Dalton looked at him. "How did you access our quarterly reports?" "The Velthari intelligence infrastructure is extensive," Catan said. "I mention it not to be unsettling, but because I want this conversation to begin with accurate information about what each party knows." He looked at Crane. "You know I wrote the 4th paragraph." "Yes," Crane said. "You know I coordinated the transmission timing." "Yes. And you know the Velthari stayed off the signatory list deliberately." "Yes," Crane said. "I'd like to understand why." Catan was quiet for a moment. 12 civilizations signing an ultimatum is a coalition," he said. 13 civilizations signing it would have been a consensus. Consensus closes doors. Coalitions leave them open." He paused. "I needed the door open." "For the sentence," Crane said. "For whatever humanity chose to say," Catan said. "I couldn't know what you would say. I could only create conditions where saying something honest was the most rational available option." He looked at Dalton. "The gate is necessary. I understood that before I built the ultimatum. The economic disruption is also real. Both things are true simultaneously, and the compact has no mechanism for addressing them simultaneously. We only have mechanisms for opposition." "So you built a new mechanism," Dalton said. "I built pressure," Catan said. "You built the mechanism." The sentence. He looked at Crane. "Who wrote it?" "I did," Crane said. "In how long?" 40 minutes, Crane said. "At 0200 on day 9. Catan's expression shifted. Something that in a Thraxian face Crane had learned to read as a form of satisfaction, not triumphant, the quieter kind. "I spent 4 months building the ultimatum," he said. "You answered it in 40 minutes at 0200. He paused. "That is either very efficient or very lucky." "Both," Crane said. "The 40 minutes was the writing. The 9 days was the thinking." Catan nodded once. "The working group Varath proposed," he said. "It will form. The coalition is already fracturing. 4 signatories have requested bilateral conversations with your delegation in the last 3 days. The countdown will not reach day 30 as a unified deadline." He paused. "What it reaches instead depends on this conversation." "What do you need from this conversation?" Crane asked. "Parameters," Catan said. "Not the ones Varath asked for publicly, the real ones." He looked at Dalton. "The second gate, the one the sentence offered. Where would you build it?" Dalton looked at Crane. Crane nodded slightly. "The Keth corridor," Dalton said. "It's the highest traffic zone in the core systems and the most underserved by current infrastructure. A gate there would reduce transit times across 9 trade corridors simultaneously." She paused. "It would also be the most expensive project humanity has ever undertaken. We can't build it unilaterally." "No," Catan said. "You can't." He was quiet for a moment. "The Velthari have been studying gate mechanics for 60 years. We have never built one because the political cost of being the civilization that controls spatial access infrastructure in the core systems is prohibitive." He looked at Dalton. "A joint project distributes that cost. No single civilization controls the gate because no single civilization builds it." "You've been waiting for someone to offer this," Crane said. I've been waiting for someone who understood that building it alone was the problem, Catan said. The threat humanity posed was not the gate itself, it was the precedent. One civilization holding spatial access in the core systems. The sentence changed the precedent. He paused. Before I could take it to the Velthari Council, I needed to know if the offer was real. It's real, Crane said, with the qualification that we don't control the parameters unilaterally. A joint project means joint governance. Yes, Catan said. That is the point. He looked at both of them. The working group will take months. The negotiations will be difficult. The Velthari Council will have concerns that the human delegation will find frustrating, and the human delegation will have requirements that the Velthari Council will find premature. He paused. This is not a clean resolution. No, Crane said. It's not. Threshold Gate 7 will still be built, Catan said. The economic disruption will still occur. Some of the 12 signatories will not recover their political positions gracefully. He looked at the table for a moment. I want you to understand that clearly before the working group begins. The sentence was the right thing to say. What follows it will cost something. The room was quiet. Crane thought about the sentence. We are prepared to build the next one for everyone, and the weight of what prepared meant when you had actually meant it at 0200 on day 9, with 11 days left on a countdown, and no certainty that it would land anywhere useful. We know, he said. Catan looked at him steadily. Good, he said. Knowing in advance is the only thing that makes the cost manageable. He stood, which was the Velthari signal that the substantive portion of a meeting had concluded. Dalton stood. Crane stood. The working group convenes in 30 days, Catan said. I'll have a draft framework circulated in 2 weeks. Read it carefully and respond honestly. Don't tell us what we want to hear. He paused at the door. That is the only thing that produced the sentence. I'd like it to produce the gate as well. He left. Crane and Dalton stood in the neutral meeting room on Covenant Station, in the quiet that follows a conversation that has changed the shape of something without resolving it. The Keth Corridor Gate, Dalton said, if we build it jointly. It's 20 years of work. Yes, Crane said. Threshold Gate 7 opens in 3 years, she said. We spend the next 17 years negotiating and building something we won't see completed. Yes, Crane said. She was quiet for a moment. Is that the bittersweet part? Crane thought about 12 civilizations sending a simultaneous ultimatum, about a Velthari admiral who had spent 4 months building pressure so that humanity would find the honest thing to say, about a sentence written at 0200 that had meant exactly what it said and would now spend 20 years becoming real. We stopped the countdown, he said. We didn't stop the cost. He picked up his case. That's usually how it goes. They walked out of the meeting room into Covenant Station's neutral corridors, where ships from 40 civilizations moved through the ordinary business of shared space, and the countdown that had started on a Tuesday was 17 days from its original endpoint and heading somewhere else entirely. The gate would be built. Both of them. That was true and would remain true regardless of what the next 20 years cost. Some things you built knowing you wouldn't see them finished. That was still building. It still counted. Crane thought it probably counted more.